Yeah, the joys of being a teenager, the joys of being confused like all the time, the joys of not knowing what the heck is going on, the joys of not knowing who you are and being under constant fear that you won't figure it out in time and that you'll accidentally set yourself up for undeniable failure. All that while juggling academics and family and all the other garbage. Woo! The joys of teen angst. Well, if you're curious about all that stuff I just described, or you're going through it right now and you kind of want a little bit more of it, or you're like me and have to deal with cringy memories of such a time, I can think of no better manga series than Blue Flag to give you all that good stuff. All of it, and way more. Blue Flag is a beautiful slice of life, coming-of-age, high school love story featuring highly realistic characters, incredibly well-written and relatable dialogue, and is overall very pleasant read. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about Blue Flag. But before we get started though, I'd like to welcome you to MangAnalysis, where I do little reviews of some of the manga I've been reading. And if you like what you see, consider subscribing, giving it a like, or maybe type down a comment. Let's get talking. Now, one more thing before I go into the summary and all that good stuff. I just want to warn you that there will be a spoiler in this video. Nothing major. The spoiler in particular that I'll be talking about happens at the end of the first book / beginning of the second book. Okay, let's get into that premise. Blue Flag, written and illustrated by Kaito, focuses on a select cast of characters going through their last years of high school. Doubt and confusion about their futures are already high enough, so you can only imagine their kerfuffle when love gets added to the mix. The main protagonist, Taichi, is just your average student who doesn't really seem to care about much, doesn't really stand out, but you know, he's happy playing video games and putting in an average amount of effort into his studies. But then there's Futaba, a very shy girl who has feelings for Toma, the most popular guy in school. Futaba notices that Taichi and Toma get along and asks Taichi for help in figuring out ways to get him to notice her. As is common, or as you might expect in those kinds of love triangle stories, Taichi inadvertently develops feelings for Futaba. Pretty common, right? Well wait, there's more! This triangle is actually not a triangle at all, it's in fact a square. Okay, I'm getting into the spoiler thing right here, so if that is a huge issue, maybe skip this part. I don't think it'll have a big effect on the rest of the video. So Futaba's best friend, Masumi, is in love with her, and Toma is in love with his best pal, Taichi. So a little bit of same-sex love right there, I like it. So read on as four incredibly confused teenagers navigate their last years of high school while trying to figure out who they are and what their feelings mean. Will they be defined by their feelings? Will they accept them as a part of who they are? Or will they try to keep these feelings buried and hope they fade away with time? Alright, so the thing I love most about Blue Flag is how it handles the character's sexuality. Actually, it's never really about sexuality, or identity, or gender for that matter. It's simply about love. Now, as a straight man, I'm not trying to say that defining sexuality or having pride in your sexual identity or gender is not important at all. I just like how the story focuses more on these characters and their feelings rather than trying to define them with labels and titles. Never once do they really mention whether or not the characters are gay, straight, bisexual, or pansexual or anything, because they themselves don't even really know. The confusion they face due to their feelings and attractions are a huge part of the story, and it's something that even I can relate to, because trying to define a feeling or attraction and put it in a box can sometimes be even more confusing than the feelings themselves. I think it can be so tempting to label how you feel about something, which can lead to a sense of comfort, safety, or even community. But sometimes it can also limit oneself to a specific definition, which may not always be the best scenario for everyone. All we know as the reader is that these characters have feelings for another person, which leads them to painful questions such as, am I allowed to feel like this? Am I wrong in feeling this way? How would they react if they knew? Do I truly feel this way? Is this a phase? And all of these questions that they feel they can't even ask themselves or anyone can lead them to feel isolated, which is something most people go through at least once in their lives. So yeah, this is a queer love story, but it goes beyond that. It's a story about love and self-exploration that honestly everybody can relate to. You may not relate to the characters' sexualities, but you might see yourself in their struggles or realize that you've experienced a similar experience at some point. Instead of giving us characters that could be locked behind the stereotypical gay kid label or the bi-curious girl label, the series offers wonderfully complex teenagers that are in the midst of discovering themselves and aren't necessarily ready or even able or wanting to let themselves be defined by their sexuality. It's a very humanizing story with very, very real characters. The next thing that I really enjoyed about Blue Period that I'd like to share with you guys is the dialogue. The dialogue is pristine, it's very realistic and absolutely not out of touch with current speech. Never once did I read a character's lines and feel like they were being exaggerated. Even the monologues felt realistic, none of that huge poetic existential My Chemical Romance monologue happening. Sure, the characters reflect and voice their doubts and concerns to the reader via inner monologue, but it never felt theatrical. It always felt real and intimate. There's this one specific conversation that happens in this series that blew me away. When confronted with the fact that his friend may be gay, one of the characters reacts very, very poorly to it. Essentially, he was being kind of homophobic. In a later scene, he voices his disdain to his other friends only to get met with disgust. He gets called homophobic for not accepting his friend's sexuality and pretty much gets told off. Instead of escalating, however, the scene takes a really pleasant turn where the young man admits that he just doesn't understand, and that what he doesn't understand scares him. His friends then try to explain sexuality and attraction to him, and he finally starts to get it a little bit, but he's still resistant to the idea. Of course, a simple conversation isn't going to change your mind immediately, especially about something like someone else's sexuality, but it was great to see the character seeking understanding, especially considering where he started. There's this wonderful back and forth where all the characters involved voice their opinions and thoughts about what it means to love someone, but in dialogue that felt natural and not really scripted, which was a delight to read. I feel like I've had those very same conversations with my friends growing up, and it was nice to see that represented without all the fluff that's usually seen in manga. One more thing about the dialogue that I think is crucial to the story is exactly how well it drives the story. Too many times in fiction, including manga and video games and movies, misunderstandings will drive the plot or character motives, which I think is stupid. If I witness a friend of mine doing something that I think is whack, I'm most likely not going to go on a 24-episode quest for revenge before sitting down with him and talking about it first. Like, I can't stand that whole plot thing where it's like, oh no, she killed my dad, I must avenge him. Wait, let's talk about it first. It's not what you think. No, the plot needs me to be mad. And then turns out he got mad for nothing because she didn't even kill his dad in the first place, and the whole thing could have been avoided if they simply sat down and talked about it. Well, Blue Flag will have none of that. Well, not a lot. The characters confront one another, they talk, they engage in dialogue, which moves the plot along. Sure, sometimes a character is being confronted with something that they just can't respond to yet, but that doesn't necessarily lead to some crazy development. So yeah, great dialogue, it's some real good stuff. Alright, straight up, there's nothing much that comes to mind when I try and find something I didn't like about this series. It's short, and every page and panel feels like it belongs there. The ending is fantastic and really closed the series beautifully. I guess if there's one thing that I thought was a little weird was the art style. Or rather, the art styles, which is the issue. So the art is amazing, it's absolutely beautiful, but it goes through 3 different style changes pretty frantically. So there's normal, good old shonen style art, and then there's some really nice chibi, and then it takes a super left turn and gives us some super realistic faces in some panels, and all that can happen in the space of like 2 pages. It can be really disorienting sometimes. I feel the art change was meant to reflect the seriousness and intensity of the scene, which it does really well, but maybe a bit too well. I think finding one style that could have fit all would have been a little less roller coastery, but it's honestly a nitpick. Nitpick. It only bothered me a tad since each style is drawn so well, so you know what, we'll give that one a pass. No real bad stuff about Blue Flag, everyone. It's a great one. So this is usually the part in my videos where I talk about what I'd like to see in the series moving forwards, but this is a completed series, so I won't really need to talk about the series moving forwards. But the question still remains, should you check it out? Yes. Yes, you should. Blue Flag is a beautiful series that truly does offer something for everyone, something special. I do think it's more suited for teenagers since it basically works as a guidebook to how confusing it is to be one, but I do think it could also be appreciated by anyone who's ever been a teenager too. So yeah, I guess everyone? I don't know, some people haven't been a teenager yet. Maybe you don't want to be confronted with your future, and that's fair. Now, I can understand feeling hesitant to get into something like this if you're not a fan of romance or find yourself preferring action-adventure style. But I truly believe that if you've been to high school, or if you've ever been unsure of who you are, or even if you're now at a time in your life where you're questioning your identity, then Blue Flag could definitely strike a chord with you. I would at least fully encourage you to read the first book. I almost promise you'll be interested in reading the second one. and the third, and the fourth, and so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely check it out. Well, that was Blue Flag. I hope you enjoyed this little review, and if you did indeed enjoy it, consider subscribing. This was MangAnalysis, and I'll see you in the next one.